Welcome to Crisis in Perception. Today, we're diving into the hidden system that governs the very air we breathe. Using Carl Zimmer's incredible book, Air-Borne, we're going to deconstruct why our institutions seem to fail time and time again to see what's right in front of our faces.
You know the confusion during the early days of COVID-19? It felt familiar for a reason. Turns out, it wasn't some new, unique failure. It was the predictable outcome of a system that has a century-long history of, well, ignoring the air and everything it carries.
All right, so here's how we're going to break this down. We're going to define the system, then dig into its incentives, look at the predictable outcomes, figure out why it's so hard to change, and finally, connect the air we breathe to a much, much bigger world.
Okay, first things first. To really get a grip on the problem, we need a totally new way to see the air itself, because it's not just empty space, not at all.
I want you to try a little thought experiment. Imagine the atmosphere is like a shared, invisible river. It's constantly flowing through every room, every building, connecting every single one of us, whether we think about it or not.
So, now that you've got this picture of a river of air in your head, let's talk about the institutional system that has basically told us how to think about it for more than 100 years.
For over a century, public health has been ruled by something called the droplet dogma. It's this core idea that infections spread through big, heavy droplets that, shoot out of your mouth and fall pretty quickly to the ground. And the advice that comes from this is always the same, right? Stand a few feet apart and wash your hands.
And this right here, this reveals a massive conflict. The droplet dogma makes infection a problem of your personal space and your personal hygiene. But the airborne reality, that makes it a collective problem of the air we all share. One view demands individual action, the other demands systemic change. A whole different ballgame.
So, you might be asking, if scientists have known about tiny airborne particles for decades, why in the world does the droplet dogma stick around? Well, the answer isn't just ignorance. It's all about powerful incentives to look away from the air.
The reasons for this are baked into the system. See, if you admit that dangerous stuff can just hang around in shared air, that means you have to fix the air. And that means redesigning our hospitals, our schools, our offices with way better ventilation and filtration. We're talking about a massive, expensive project.
This quote from David Michaels, the former head of OSHA, just lays it out perfectly. Even before the pandemic, his agency was getting constant pushback from industries that were terrified of the high costs of making their buildings and their workers safer.
And there's another really wild layer here: history. Right when the science of aerobiology, the study of life in the air, was really taking off, it got sucked into secret military programs for biological warfare. A huge shroud of secrecy fell over the entire field, and for decades, knowledge that could have saved lives was kept locked away from the public.
So when you have a system with such powerful incentives to just ignore a problem, its failures during a crisis become completely predictable. The confusion isn't the exception to the rule, it is the rule.
This timeline is, it's just staggering. It shows a nearly 90-year gap between scientific discovery and when institutions finally accept it. Scientists proved that airborne transmission was real back in the 1930s and 50s, but here we are in 2009 and again in 2020, and major public health organizations are still debating the exact same ideas.
The Skagit Valley Coral outbreak became this tragic, real-world proof of what those early scientists had discovered. One sick singer infected dozens of other people across a huge room. This wasn't about big droplets. This was about everyone breathing the same air, filled with tiny, lingering aerosols.
So you see, what we're looking at isn't just a series of isolated mistakes or bad calls. It is a feature of the system's deep-seated, structural resistance to seeing the unseen.
And this recurring pattern, this is the heart of it. It reveals a fundamental crisis in perception. Our institutions, our economic models, they simply are not built to see, to value, or to manage an invisible resource like the air. They're actually designed to resist acknowledging risks that would force us to redesign our physical world.
And that brings us to the really big picture. Because once you learn how to see the air, you start to realize it connects literally everything. All of a sudden, public health becomes inseparable from architecture and urban planning. The way we design our buildings literally dictates the health of our lungs. That secret history of military research that was hidden for decades, it directly shapes how we respond to a pandemic today. And the air quality inside your home is deeply connected to the health of the entire global atmosphere. It's all one vast interconnected system.
Seeing this system clearly, understanding its incentives, its history, its blind spots, that is the absolutely critical first step. Because it lets us finally ask a much better question: how do we redesign our world to finally value the clean, safe air that we all have to share? Crisis in Perception examines how systems shape belief and how better tools help us see clearly. This project is free and publicly accessible. If you'd like to support the time, tools, and research behind Crisis in Perception, you can become a supporter on Patreon. For a longer, audio-based analysis of this topic, see the deep dive linked in the description. If you enjoy this kind of systems-level analysis, please like, subscribe, and comment with books or topics you'd like us to explore next.